Before we start, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. Only 4% of my channel is subscribed. When it reaches 1,000 subscribers, I will release a special video. The night was unusually clear, the sky an endless expanse of stars, each one twinkling like a promise in the vast universe. The silence of the sleepy town of Crestview was just past midnight when it was broken. In an instant the sky seemed aflame, as if daylight had arrived suddenly and unnaturally. Then the stars were gone, hidden behind the blinding light now racing toward the earth at a speed beyond belief. In an instant it slowed, in just 2 moments, hanging silently over the ridge, casting an eerie glow over the darkened landscape. He was more a man of the quiet of his cabin than this, Eddie Stark, now standing on his porch, eyes glued to the spectacle. He was hardly alone. Across the planet, eyes scanned the skies as the scene appeared on all points of the globe. The synchronized, silent arrival of more than one alien craft. Unlike in movies, not such a shockingly obvious invasion, not one of chaos, only one of awe-inspiring calm, it seemed, that spread as fast as the news of the visitors. The spacecraft above Crestview was a wonder of engineering, smooth and reflective on the surface, although organically so. It was vast, larger than any aircraft known to man, yet it hovered effortlessly, making the air around it hum with a frequency that felt both unsettling and exhilarating. The world, after all, reacted in a mix of speculation. The news channels, social media, and government bodies at large erupted into a frenzy of theories and queries. Was this an invasion, or was it a peaceful visit? The world held its breath for what seemed like an eternity, waiting for the sign. Top military officials and high scientific advisors surrounded the President of the United States, who met in the small, secure room in Washington, D.C. Images of spacecraft from all corners of the planet blinked across the screens. "Has there been any communication?" the President asked, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Nothing as yet, sir," reported General Cartwright, his eyes glued to the live feed. "But their approach was non-aggressive. We're keeping our response measured." Back in Crestview, Eddie's mind raced with the memories of his time in Special Forces, missions that seemed impossible. He had faced danger, the unknown, a number of times, but this was different. This was not human. This was beyond anything he could have anticipated facing again in his quiet life. He almost had the sense that the silence was somehow violated, although not by sound but by light, as if a rainbow spectrum, dancing in rhythm, had come to life and frolicked its way across the width of the spacecraft's hull. The light show stopped as suddenly as it had started, and in its place shone a soft, almost opalescent beam that shone from under the craft down to the center of the main street in Crestview. A figure stepped out into the light, moving with another worldly grace, almost floating, as it lowered itself to the ground. It was completely inhuman, tall, with luminescent skin that captured the very essence of the starlit sky. Its huge eyes searched the gathered crowd with a curiosity that almost mirrored their own. When the visitor of an alien touched down, every mobile device within a mile radius suddenly buzzed and chirped to life. "We come in peace. We seek your aid. We are the Krell." Eddie watched, his military instincts mingling with a profound sense of wonder. No protocol would have imagined this first contact scenario. And as the Krell's message repeated into the crisp night air, he knew that life on Earth had changed forever. Now began what could be a new chapter for humanity, a changing place in the cosmos, and perhaps even a new calling for Eddie, whose path he thought was set in the quiet isolation of his mountain retreat. Chapter 2, The Call to Action. The night was unusually clear when the heavens parted silently above Pine Ridge, a small town embraced by the shadows of looming mountains and sprawling forests. The arrival of the alien spacecraft, a colossal structure that hung in the sky like a silent moon, was met not with panic, but a quiet awe. It hovered, a silent sentinel, its surface shimmering with 1,000 hues, as if the starlight had been woven into its very essence. In the serene isolation of his small, cluttered cabin on the outskirts of town, Eddie Stark was jolted from his sleep by the insistent ringing of his old military-issue communicator. It was a relic from his past life, one he had kept more out of nostalgia than necessity. The screen flickered to life, displaying the stern face of General Matthews, a man whose call at this ungodly hour meant the quiet life Eddie had painstakingly built was about to be disrupted. "Eddie, we need you." The general's voice was terse, the urgency unmistakable. "It's not just a national security issue. It's global, maybe even galactic." Eddie rubbed the sleep from his eyes, his mind still clinging to the remnants of a dream. "What's going on, General?" "It's the visitors, Eddie. They've come with a request, a mission that needs your expertise. You've been recommended by the top brass because of your record and your unique experiences with unconventional situations." Skepticism threaded through Eddie's response. "Visitors? You mean extraterrestrials?" The idea seemed ripped from the pages of a pulp science fiction novel, not the reality of his rugged, forest-bound existence. "Yes, and they're here on peaceful terms for now. They've brought technology we can barely understand, let alone replicate. But that's not the immediate concern. They've lost something. Someone important. A child, to be precise, and their laws forbid them from engaging in direct retrieval operations on a non-allied planet. It's a diplomatic quagmire." The general paused, allowing the gravity of the situation to sink in. Eddie felt a reluctant thrill at the prospect, a stir of his old life's adrenaline-fueled days. "And they want me to find this child?" "Exactly. You won't be alone. There's a team assembling, specialists in their fields. But they need a leader. They need someone who can keep cool when things get out of this world." The conversation shifted as the general outlined the specifics. The child had been lost in the Andes, a result of a scouting mission gone awry. The terrain was unforgiving, and the local threats, both human and environmental, made the mission perilous. As dawn began to break, casting a pale light through the rustic windows of his cabin, Eddie knew his decision had already been made. The solitude he had cherished seemed suddenly suffocating. He needed this, needed to prove he was still capable of being more than a recluse. With a deep breath, Eddie responded, his voice firm with newly resolved determination. "I'm in, General. I'll do it. Not just for the brass or the extraterrestrials, but because maybe this is what I've been waiting for, a chance to make a real difference again." By the time he ended the call, the first rays of sunlight were piercing the horizon, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floor of his cabin. Eddie stood by the window, looking out over the expanse of wilderness that had been his refuge. Today, it looked less like a sanctuary and more like a starting point. Packing his gear felt like reuniting with old friends. The familiar weight of his survival pack, the snug fit of his boots, the comforting heft of his multi-tool. Each item was a piece of a puzzle that was his former life, a life he was about to reclaim, if only for a while. As Eddie locked the cabin behind him, the spacecraft still loomed large in the sky, its presence a silent beacon of the adventure that lay ahead. With a last glance at his humble abode, he stepped into the crisp morning air, ready to face whatever this new chapter might bring. His journey back to the stars, or at least to their occupants, had begun. Chapter 3. Assembling the Team. The morning sun had barely begun to paint the sky with strokes of gold and amber when Eddie Stark found himself standing before the towering edifice of the Global Defense Headquarters. The building, a monument of glass and steel, reflected the first light of day, mirroring the uncertainty that flickered across Eddie's stern face. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with a nervous energy that resonated with the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. In a spacious, starkly furnished conference room, a group of individuals, experts in their respective fields, gathered around a sleek black table. Each person bore the weight of the impending mission in their gaze, a mix of determination and apprehension. At the head of the table stood a figure who contrasted sharply with the human contingent. Kara, the Krell emissary, her skin shimmering subtly with an ethereal glow, addressed the assembly with a voice that resonated with a calm authority. "Thank you for joining us on such short notice," she began, her eyes scanning the room. "The mission you have been called upon to undertake is not only vital to the Krell, but potentially transformative for human-alien relations." Eddie listened intently, his arms folded, his mind racing through the implications of each word. Beside him sat Dr. Mei Ling, a renowned biologist known for her work on alien ecosystems. Her presence was a nod to the complexities they expected to encounter: an unknown pathogen and an alien child lost in an environment no human had yet fully understood. As Kara continued, the room's large screen flickered to life, displaying images of the dense, lush landscapes of the tropical Andes, overlaid with topographic maps and thermal readings. "The child's last known coordinates are here." Kara pointed to a region marked by steep slopes and dense foliage. "The area is not only geographically challenging, but is also currently under the watch of various interested parties." Eddie's thoughts were momentarily diverted as the door to the conference room swung open to admit the final member of their team, a young tech specialist named Javier, who was to manage communications and technological integrations for the mission. Javier's reputation for innovation in field tech was well known, and his confident stride as he took his seat was a reassuring sight. With the team now complete, Kara distributed slim, high-tech devices, personal translators, designed to facilitate seamless communication between the humans and Krell. She explained their function with an elegant simplicity, underscoring the importance of clear, precise dialogue throughout their journey. As the briefing progressed, detailed mission objectives were laid out. Eddie took the lead, outlining the route they would take, the equipment they would carry, and the contingencies in place for unexpected challenges. His voice firm and sure, belied the roiling mix of excitement and fear in his gut. Dr. Mei Ling spoke next, her tone clinical yet tinged with an unmistakable thrill. "The pathogen we're likely to encounter is unlike any terrestrial microorganism. Our primary goal is to secure the child without exposing him, or ourselves, to further risk. I've prepared a series of biosafety protocols that we'll need to follow strictly." Javier chimed in with a rundown of the gear they'd use, from drones capable of penetrating thick canopy layers to specialized suits designed to protect against a range of biological and environmental hazards. His presentation was punctuated with technical specs and simulations, painting a vivid picture of their preparedness. As the meeting drew to a close, the room settled into a heavy silence, each member lost in thoughts of the daunting task ahead. Eddie broke the silence, his voice steady, yet imbued with an inspiring resolve. "We have a child to save, a mission that transcends any we've faced. Let's show what we're made of." Nods of agreement echoed around the room. A silent pact forged in the heart of the Global Defense Headquarters. As they filed out, the early morning light had transformed, now flooding the space with a bright promise. The day ahead was uncertain, yet the resolve in Eddie's steps spoke of a man ready to brave the unknown for a cause greater than himself.